Welcome to the World Builders Anvil, episode 245. Today I have an interview with Jon Metcalf. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Now, in full disclosure, Jon's here because he's awesome. I known him for years. He's a good friend. And I'm actually kind of ashamed it's taken me this long to get him on because, one of the things I was thinking about this is most people, we think about writing books, playing games with friends, video games maybe, creating your own role-playing game as ways to, use our creative energies, the things that we love and getting them more into our everyday lives. But I was thinking about there must be other ways. And then it hit me. I have a friend who he runs a business that has nothing to do with games or geekery, which is probably why I didn't even think about inviting him for this topic. But he actually has worked in gaming, and I don't want to go too much into it, but my friend Jon Metcalf, thank you very much for being on. I appreciate it. Is there anything else you would like people to know about you?
I am a longtime gamer since I was a little kid, and actually found my origin story is really about starting a gaming club in junior high school and high school. Really, before that, I was just like this tormented little child, and then I figured out, whoa, this is before the internet, kids. So I was able to find myself by starting this gaming club and having, ultimately 120 people a week show up to game with me. And I was like, oh, wow, people can relate to me in this world. So it's huge in my life. Always has been.
Yeah. Yeah. No, awesome. I mean, my first thought off of there right away is, what geek shouldn't have an origin story? I've never thought about that before either. That's good that you have an origin story. I don't have a episode 0 yet. I have to think one up. But on top of that, how do you feel today? Do you feel orc or elf?
I feel like orc with a degree from a small liberal arts college. That's kind of where I'm at.
I think if your wife was here, she'd probably agree with that. All right. So getting into the conversation here, let's talk a little bit about how do you incorporate the creative gamer, GM creative side into your business?
So, my business is I own a martial arts school, which, like most martial arts schools in the country, it's, about 70% kids. So, just to give you a picture, and I've got a few hundred families who are participating right now. And every business is a story. Every business is a culture. I mean, I remember one of the things I did coming out of college was I temped for a semester, actually in between semesters. And I loved temping because I could walk into a place and know within minutes, oh, I'd love to work here, and oh God, I would never want to work here. And because the culture of businesses is so palpable, right? You walk into some place and you can tell, you walk into the salon and you can tell the ladies are snipey with each other, and you walk into a supermarket and they're like, hey, how are you? Or yeah, here's your groceries, paper, plastic. And you can just kind of tell how people treat each other right off the bat, and what the values are, and what's missing, and what's there for you. And I knew that I always wanted to spend my time in places where the culture was good, where the culture was positive, where people were happy to be with each other. And so temping was an awesome window into all these little companies. I told the company, I'll do anything for 3 days or 3 days. That's it. And I wrote my thesis for, $10 an hour or whatever it is in a lot of those places. So, that was a great lesson for me about culture. And I knew that, when I started my own business, that I wanted people to relate to each other and to my business in a certain way. And so I had a story to tell. I had an audience to play with, and to co-create with, because look, me talking doesn't create a story. That's just like when you're gaming. It's like it's that conversation between you and your players. That's it. So I just have a lot more players at my table, and we jump and punch and kick and scream, probably hopefully more than the kids at your table. But that's what we're doing. And there's all sorts of different ways at different aspects of the business that we engage in story, and we engage in things sometimes very consciously, like we actually do LARP a couple times a year, but a lot of times in much more subtle ways about what the tale is, about what our business is out to accomplish.
So on the business storytelling side, I guess the world building is kind of finding the elements that you need to present the story forward. Can you see some kind of connection there back into world building specifically, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think world building is really about having strong cultures and the interactions between, the clashes between those cultures, and whether they're a personal, tale within a culture, or whether it's actually a clash between two separate cultures. And cultures are like a collection of beliefs and practices and ideals, right? And so as a martial arts school, there's very specific ideals that we adhere to. And then we need to, take those ideals and extract. So, hey, if we have this culture about respect and discipline, like what does that look like? Hey, what should we do when we're coming in and out of the place? What things do we celebrate? What codes of conduct do we have? What aspects do we bring from Asian culture over? What do we invent? What do we appropriate from American culture? How do we create this really vibrant collection of people, this community, who are surrounded with respect and discipline as part of that? So that's a huge part of what we do, is trying to create that feeling for people like, oh yeah, this is obviously how we do things, because that's what integrity martial arts is really about. The same in my company. So specifically, we're looking at one of the big breakthroughs I had in my business a couple of years ago was I started really heavily investing in what goes on in the lobby. Right? Just because I was watching the parents, and a lot of times I would sit there and do what parents do in kids' activities, which is like slump in their chair and be like, oh man, finally, 5 minutes where someone else is taking care of my kid. And they go on their phone and, tweet or Facebook or whatever, and just kind of zone out. And I think, well, I get that because I'm a parent too, but what more could be happening? How can we make this, deeper? How can we make the experience richer? So I started doing things in the lobby to encourage social interaction, to deepen the message, to deepen the culture. And so it started with simple stuff. Like we brought out coffee, tea. We'd, have conversation starters. We'd involve them in classroom discussions. Like if we're talking to their kids about safety, or we're talking to their child about, it's like yesterday we were talking about freedom. Because it's September, and I think about freedom in September. And how do we bring that conversation out of the classroom into the lobby? How do we get adults thinking about freedom? Like, what does that mean? And how does that relate to respect and discipline, to our primary culture? And when we start these conversations, and then we get adults talking to each other about values, well, damn, that just doesn't happen that often. Like
actually talking.
Actually talking, and then talking about values. It's like people are so excited about this idea. When we have this, oh my God, that was a great conversation. We actually talked about stuff that matters instead of, like whose cat, is, sorry, cat owners. I'm a cat owner, but, which cat video they watch. So it's a huge thing, like to be relevant, to be, to feel like they belong to something that matters. And so I think gaming is a lot like this. You're building this world to help your players feel like they belong to something that's real, that's bigger than they are, that's immersive. And a business with a mission. A lot of times, we game just for entertainment, but my business has a mission. It's to provide a change in the way that we see ourselves, so that we can create a different level of performance and a self-expression in our lives. And by the way, if you're out there gaming and creating games to actually do those things for people, I want to hear more about it. So I think that's totally possible, by the way. If nobody's doing that and that appealed to you, start that now and tell me about it. But yeah, I think that kind of transformational experience is what culture should do.
Yeah, because in a way, like thinking into elements, which is kind of the way I like to abstract things back. So it's kind of like you've decided this culture that you've built for your business, sort of the way, like in a game, you'd create a fictional culture for someone, but obviously with the intention of not some evil race, but like trying to say this is the way we want to be. I think most business owners should have that kind of idea, but you just have to extend to your customers because of the way you serve. And then you kind of have like almost built events, and I don't mean that in sort of the big, events that you have for your business, but like, your random event table for if you see someone unengaged in this part of the studio where there's nothing planned, here's some things that you can do there. So it's almost like, that random, roll the 3d6 dice and, kobolds pop up and they have to fight the kobolds off. But so it's sort of like, in a way, build up the elements. And then on top of it, too, you do the LARP gaming, which you talked about, which is obviously creating a game for the kids to participate in. Obviously, I would assume, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's to reinforce some of the training they've had, plus the cultural ideals.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, for me, if we're going to do something at Integrity Martial Arts, it's got to serve a few purposes. One, it's got to be fun. Two, it's got to improve our students' quality of life or movement. And three, it should at least not lose money. It's those three things are priorities. And so I remember back, 10 years ago when bullying was this huge topic that every parent was thinking about. And the trainings for it really sucked in the sense that they were either completely cultural based without any sense of intervention. So it's like, oh yeah, if everybody's nice to each other, bullying will go away. I was like, well, no, duh. We've known that for a long time. Or they tried to be intervention, but the advice just sucked. Like no kid would ever believe that would work. And if they tried, they're going to get humiliated or their butt kicked. So I was thinking about this and I was like, okay, well, I want to have this role-playing, interaction because if you're going to train a kid on how to prevent bullying, don't have them sing songs. Believe me, that's an actual bullying program. Because that doesn't work. It's not like Glee. 80s show, look it up. And
if I find it a link, I'll put it in the show notes.
Thanks. So I wanted them to essentially role play out these bullying interactions so they could gain some competency and some skill. And I didn't want to go, okay, well, we're going to invent this fictional character, Bobby the Bully, and Bobby the Bully is going to always be,
sort of like that bad video from school.
Yeah, exactly, because that's just so lame. And what color do I make Bobby? Is he a white kid? Is he a black kid? It can be a black kid. Then we'll get in trouble for that. But if we make him a white kid, then what are we saying about that? And it's like, is it a boy? Is it a girl? Is it, so it's like, well, I don't want it to be human, but frankly, I can't convince my staff to dress up as cranes, or leopards.
Disappointing.
50 weeks a year.
Maybe some of the volunteers, but not the staff. Huh?
Yeah, we can do. They'll throw down every once in a while, but we're not doing costume changes in the middle of class. It's just there's only so much time we have. So, I came with this idea that we'd have all these different kinds of trolls, right? Pick something fictional. We can all agree. So it was cool because I wanted the curriculum to be about social skills, not about physical skills. If someone's bullying you, most of the time you don't need to kick their butt. It's usually a social interaction. So I made trolls invulnerable to physical harm. So you just can't beat them up. It's just not even an option. They'll just look at you like, what are you doing? And then smash you to bits. And so I had read a book, actually I'd taken a training about the social aspects of bullying and what there's like archetypes, people are taking certain social advantages when they're doing that. And so we made up these different colored trolls, and each colored troll sort of represented the different archetypes of what bullies need, in order to leave you alone, because they need something. That's why they're coming to you, right? And so, pink trolls, we're seeking out this kind of social reinforcement, and green trolls are seeking out this kind of social reinforcement, and there were different ways of handling them. And the kids kind of learned, like, hey, when I'm dealing with a green troll, when I'm dealing with a blue troll, I act like this, and we'd play those games in class, and then we put them into a big LARP, for a weekend or for a day. And they're getting these practical skills, and it's kind of become part of the culture of the school. Like, hey, when we want to problem solve against these things, we don't have to, go to our fist. We don't have to go to it's like, we need to figure out what this person needs so that we can get what we want, which is to leave us alone or become friends or laugh together instead of laugh at me. It was such a fun way, and kids and adults, they want to engage in these sort of epic tales. They want to engage in these fantasies of victory, and they just give them a perfect way to do that in a way that was meaningful and practical, and so much better than what I'd seen from the after school special.
Doesn't feel like propaganda.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was a game, and like my whole martial arts program for kids is called Power Play, because I think like play should be fun and play should be powerful. It should change who we are. It should accentuate the aspects of ourselves that we want to bring to the forefront of our personalities. And so that's kind of what we do at the dojo. We find things that are powerful, that are effective, and raising the stakes for us, on a personal character level, and figure out a way to make it fun and how to gamify it. Fortunately, I work in a medium that involves punch kicking, screaming, and jumping around and hitting stuff, and like it's more or less a LARP anyway.
There's a natural marriage there.
Yeah. I mean, we just don't carry 10-foot poles. They're like 6 feet tall. We call them bow staffs.
So when did you have your ICANN moment? That moment where you're like, I can really kind of bring all of these things together in my business, which I don't know if there's ever even hesitation in you, because you're I don't know, you're very creative thinker, so maybe you never felt barred, but was there a moment that really I can marry all of these things together?
I think there are several moments. I'm trying to think about how to avoid talking about my own boring personal victory stories.
That's actually exactly what the prompt is.
Oh, okay. You guys space out for like 2 minutes, please. You're going to get a thing. So like I'll go into a couple. So I think gaming is so powerful. So let me tell you my life story in terms of gaming. So elementary school, not very interesting. Had a personal trauma. It made me think about, why do people die? Why do people live? Why am I alive? And therefore didn't relate to any other freaking kid, because they're all thinking about which G.I. Joe is tougher.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to say there was a lot of vicious bullying or anything like that. I just didn't fit in. And so I just kept my lonely existence reading books about Patton, and stuff like that. I had a few close friends. And then in junior high school, my social studies teacher had us play diplomacy. And I was like, dude, that is freaking cool. And I'd already been doing a little bit of D&D because my brother did it, and, chess team, that kind of stuff. So I took 8th grade off. My father's a professor in a sabbatical. Came back in 9th grade. I was like, went back to that same social studies teacher and said, "Hey, can we play that game again?" He's like, "I'm not your teacher." I said, "Yeah, I know." So like we just got a few kids together and during lunch period to play the game. And it was just because he liked me because I don't know, because there's something wrong with him, I guess. And so we're playing this game, and then like back in the day, 7th to 9th grade was like a school, and then 10th to 12th grade was called high school. So I get to high school, and I wanted to continue gaming this thing, so I start this club. And I remember in 9th grade, I had done the same thing to start this lunchtime club, and back then, those were the days when Dungeons and Dragons was like, there had just been this movie come out about like, I don't forget what it's called, like Dungeon Master, about like kids who like lost track of reality and fantasy and like killed people in sewers, which actually never happened, but like
it made for a good news story.
Yeah, it was definitely urban legend material, and like people thought, if you played Dungeons and Dragons, you're a Satanist. Like, have you ever looked in the monster manual? Oh my God, it's like a manual for how to be a Satanist.
They cover some of those books. Definitely could play into that.
Yeah, fantastic, right? So. Like, I had to convince like a room full of parents. So the first time, like I sort of stood up to adults and said, "Look, guys, this is a game about storytelling. This is a game about, engaging your imagination and creating new possibilities. Now, if you have trouble distinguishing your fantasy from your reality, you have much more severe psychological problems than this. And then your child also should engage in theater, creative writing, or any kind of imaginative play if they can't distinguish those things, because it's too dangerous. But let's face it, we're not talking about kids who don't belong in mental institutions already, who have those problems. But if we're talking about normal kids, if we're talking about people who understand that they can have victories and overcome challenges in a fantasy way, in ways that they could never do in real life. You can't draw a sword, in downtown Toronto and, overcome your bad thing. That's usually not a good life path for us these days.
Not going to be a good day.
Yeah. Unless you're Viggo Mortensen, you can get away with that.
It's true.
So I just remember that was the first time I convinced a group of adults to do stuff. And then I went to high school, started my club, and became popular. My club grew, my strategic games club, which essentially was mostly role playing games at the stage, had 120 people a week attending, and that carried through to so I learned how to organize, learned how to do all this stuff, and I found my martial arts gaming too, because by the time I was in ninth grade, dude, I was sick of Arthurian legend gaming, because I've been doing it since I was 9. So I remember that seventh grade social studies teacher had taught a unit on Indian mythology. I was like, oh, there's a lot of cool gods, and they had skulls and stuff. So well, let's check out the Indian thing, right?
This guy's a destroyer. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. There's a resource handbook right there. So I was like, cool. So let's do some research on this. So I looked at a book in Indian mythology, and I looked at another one. I looked at religion book, a history book, just trying to flesh out my world. And by the time I got to book 20, I'm like, okay, this is outgrowing my game. And then sure enough, I discovered Buddhism through that, and I got really interested in South Asian religions, and then that became my major in college. And
you got lost there for several years, I believe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Some parts of me never made it back. That marriage of Asian philosophy and being a physical kid who got kicked out of physical activities because I sucked, just sort of led me to martial arts. And now here I am doing this 25 years later. 25 years of martial arts, more or less. So gaming shaped my world. So there were so many I can moments where I came into gaming as a kid who didn't know how to make friends, who didn't really have any agency in their life, and then all of a sudden became someone who became a spokesperson for something that was fun for me, and then became a leader for large groups of people to engage them in something that maybe they hadn't been doing before, but discovered how fun it was. And when my club grew to that size, I had kids from every walk of life in the school. It was literally the largest club in my high school.
Wow, that's a cool high school.
Yeah, well, I know, and it was just a kind of typical high school, but the club was cool because the culture of the club was yeah, come in and try this stuff, man. You can be anything you want. And that just appealed to a lot of people. So we had the art kids and the music kids and jocks, and it was cool. It was probably the best melting pot of anything in my school. And it was a freaking gaming club. Who would have predicted that?
Yeah,
not me. So,
especially you're not quite as old as me, but back in those days, gaming wasn't considered quite as popular as it is today.
Oh yeah, it's amazing to me what's going on today. It was definitely looked down upon nerdy. Even geek back then was an insult. Now it's praise, and I'm super excited about that. That's what was
people
my
think
dream.
It's a precursor to Founder now.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant.
All right, so now anywhere you want to go, just from you, what is your biggest achievement to date?
Okay. Yeah. So I think the biggest achievement really is the community. I happen to be involved with, if we look outside the family, I'm thinking about something that's not really true, but if we look at things that really directly relate to what we're talking about, the community of people that I have at my company is super strong. Case in point, I had a kid whose dad was killed in a car crash a couple months ago, and then next weekend there's going to be this huge fundraiser, and it's perfect for the culture of the school, where it's a carnival fundraiser, and I am doing really just a little bit of coordination for it, but it's put together by the members because they want to help this kid out. And it's fun, and it's obviously it's respectful, it's charity work. and these people just care about each other, like, they'll post on the Facebook group, like, hey, I need help, watching my kid, or hey, I'm going to the park, and they'll just show up for each other and be there for part of it. And like, hey, this is going on in my personal life. Does anyone have any advice or have any contacts who can help me out with this thing? And it's kind of idyllic. It's sort of like a small town feeling. And I know those communities exist out there, but I love the fact that this one exists as a live community where people see each other face to face a couple of times a week. And
it's not just a Facebook group.
Yeah, it's not just a Facebook group where people say nice things to each other. Nothing wrong with that, but these people hang out together. They have real life interaction. They in a lot of cases they roll around on the floor with each other and wrestle. And I think there's something really potent about physical contact and touch, and like we could easily have done this from across town with a webcam, and I'm actually sitting here in the room with Jeff, and I just feel like that's different. I maybe that's just because I'm older and I don't relate to FaceTime the same way I relate to actual FaceTime. But I do think there's something. It's
not just the name of an app?
Yeah, no, actually, it turns out. So I think designing and captaining this community of people who care about each other, who are working, have this commitment to becoming better people, who have a commitment towards helping others, that's a huge accomplishment. And the products of that are huge. I just had a couple get married earlier this summer who met in my school when they were like 8 or 9, or actually she's 8 and 10. He's a couple years older than she is, and they became friends. When she moved up to the teen class at 11, and now they're 30 and they just got married.
Wow.
And like if it was like just 2 people, it's like, oh, okay, well that's kind of cool. But it wasn't just those 2 people. So their wedding, which was a destination wedding, it was down in Puerto Rico. The whole bridal party more or less was like black belts from my school. And these are people who've left the school 10, 20 years ago. In some cases, they went off to college. One of them came from Colorado. I live in Connecticut. One came in from California. So like the relationships that get born there are last. And I think, when you're world building, when you're creating a gaming community, you want to think about, hey, is it my job to just create an experience so that I can show off how clever my world building is, or really what are you providing to the players in your room? They're people. Why are they there? Like what's in it for them? Is this a chance for them to express a part of themselves that goes unexpressed in their daily lives? Is this a chance for them to live out some hero fantasies where they get some agency to because I think that's part of it, right? What's the purpose for them? What are they seeking to get out of it? And what can you provide for them individually and collectively? You're usually not gaming one-on-one, or it's one to a few. And what can you do to make sure that your players have relationships that extend outside their characters? And the best games I've been in, like I walk out of that feeling like we were part of a team, like we work together, like, we'll relate back, in a lot of ways. It's like, when you look back on, I remember we survived that, terrible college class. It's like, I remember we survived, back when talking to like real friends about real life, or, oh gosh, remember that teacher this year, or remember how we got through that rough boss, or, we got through that terrible project, and all these ways that we relate to people, through shared experiences. And I think gaming offers a really powerful tool for doing that, even though it's not quote unquote real. But I think it can have real relationship building qualities to it. And I think as game masters, we can strive, for those guys who are gaming, we can strive to create those shared experiences that bind people together. And if you're writing fiction, my wife's a fiction author, I think you can do something similar with your fan base, because you have this unprecedented access to talk to your fans and have them talk to you. And I look at these tribes of people out there who what they share in common is a setting, which describe the country pretty well too, or a town. Yeah,
I think really everything, from a house to a street to a neighborhood, all the way up. Yeah, no, awesome. Okay, so now we are going to wrap up by going into the gauntlet round. This is The thing that really typically frustrates writers, but I think John will be a little bit better with this.
Do I get to
ask
punch
you a
people?
question, and you just give the first answer that comes to your brain.
Okay.
What held you back from sharing your world, which just isn't relevant to you at all?
Well, no, it is. What held me back, and I think all that for anyone is that fear of being judged.
Awesome. Favorite type of fantasy world: alien, Earth-like, or Earth-based?
Earth-based with a twist.
What is your favorite time period for fantasy setting?
Primitive medieval cultures.
What is your most important habit or skill in creating a world?
Understand the essence of the culture.
What tool or tools could you not work without?
What?
What tool could you not work without? Like when we're world building.
A saw.
Or as I say, your fist, but
Okay.
I'll show you respect. That's not how he does it. What is one resource that you'd offer to a world builder who wants to maybe go down your path and take it into a untraditional setting, gamify their job or their workplace?
I think a lot of those tools are actually internal. So while certainly I'll go read a book or something like that to get a feel for a culture or for I think really the best tool you have is to imagine your audience and think about what's sexy to them, what's fun for them.
Now, if you ever ended up in a world you created, I'm not going to let you go easy and make the one that you did for your martial arts studio, but one of your hardcore worlds, if you end up in one of those that you've created, what would be the first thing that you do?
Look for food. That's what I always do, though. So
it's basically the same thing that you do now. All right. And if you ever have the chance to eat with the Metcalfs, it's always a wonderful experience. And I do want to thank you so much, John, for showing up today and sharing some of your aspects. I just thought this would be really interesting to kind of look at this and how it extends into life. And especially, really, I think so often as creatives, sometimes when we get out of that college phase and we stop playing our games with our friends, we lose our willingness to be creative, and that comes back to haunt us. So thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. It was really fun.
And for anyone today, if you want to talk to John more about gamifying your life or your workplace or just about anything of geekery, he's a good guy. Come to our group in Facebook, which is facebook.com/groups/Undercroft. And John is a member, and he'll chat to you there when he has the ability. So thank you again, John.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.